Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. You know how you be a really good son on Mother's Day? You get her grandfather's car running again for the first time in 15 years. I feel bad because you didn't have any input on that one. But then again, you're not in the video at all on that one.
That's fine. Don't have to have input. That's a good, really short one.
It is.
You know?
Did I deliver it well?
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Everyone, this is my 1966 Chrysler New Yorker. This car is a family heirloom, been with us for over 55 years.
This car was ordered with all the boxes checked: air conditioning, power seat, windows, power steering, and brakes.
My grandparents bought it new in Fredericksburg, Texas from Chrysler Motor Sales in 1966. But with the unfortunate passing of my grandpa in '69, my father then took ownership. We have a lot of great memories as a teenager with this car. Since Dad owned a motel at the time, he always parked it out front so our customers would see it. My mother knew after my first son was born in 1974 that I would need a family car. So upon our return from Germany in '76, I inherited my grandfather's Chrysler.
Well, once Dad got his hands on it, he used it as a drag car tow vehicle for a few years. And then when Mom and Dad relocated outside city limits in 1984, the poor thing was basically put into retirement. Sure, there was the occasional startup now and then, but its days as a family hauler had come to an end.
We did manage to rekindle its fire back in 2005 for a cruise night in Vernon, Texas, and a local car show. But for the most part, the car has just sat. And frankly, I had always wanted it back on the road.
So I set out to buying parts and fluids so that by Mother's Day, this 440 powered piece of family history could continue turning miles into memories. So I'm running through the parts list in my head of everything I have, everything I've ordered, everything that's gotten here, and everything this car needs, and I think I've got everything I need to make this thing start and run on Sunday, and maybe even go down the street. Wish me luck. So this car has had air shocks on it its entire life, at least as far as I've known it. So, I mean, we're talking 40 years plus here. So the air shocks are going away, and in their place, I found these. They're I don't know if you call them a load supporting shock or a load helper shock. They've got a coil spring mounted on them, and as heavy as this car is, as big as it is, it's definitely going to help the performance in regards to a handling and control aspect. So I just spent the last 45 minutes fighting the upper shock mount bolts out of this car, buried under no less than 35 years of dirt and dust and everything else you can think of. The last of the lower bolts is coming off right now. With a little bit of prying, a little bit of praying, these old shocks are finally going to retire. And then we'll install new stuff. Well, okay, that does it for the rear. What a job that was. But they're done. They look great. I got some new shocks for the front. Let's go see if we can get them put on. So, front shocks. This should be a whole lot easier than the rears were. But I have a feeling this car is yet to prove me wrong on everything. I think is going to be easy, but let's find out. Let's see here. So far, okay. That was just a lock nut on top of the actual securing nut for the top of the shock. And as all of you probably know, anytime you go to remove the upper shock bolt or the retention nut from a shock, you run into what I think I'm running into right here. And that is when you rotate the nut, it rotates the entire stock shaft of the, yep, It's rotating the whole shaft. Not a surprise. You run into this every time you do shocks on a car, especially if they have the single stud upper mount like this one does. Clamp on your favorite pair of needle nose vice grips and then start the wrench game. Luckily, the open end on these wrenches, I don't know if you can see it or not, but they have like a little cutout. It provides a very rudimentary, very basic caveman style ratcheting action. That doesn't always work the best, but in situations like this, it's actually pretty good. So I'm gonna get this shock off, I'm gonna get the new ones on, and then we'll move upstairs. So, just learned something interesting about this car even I didn't know. 66 Chrysler, right? Newport, 300, New Yorker, whatever. Unless I'm stupid, which there's a good chance, apparently you have to separate the upper and lower ball joints, let the lower control arm hang in order to get the shock out. I learn something new with every project. This one's no exception. Sun's going down. This is Texas, so the mosquitoes are coming out like mud. They're everywhere. I'll be here for a little while trying to get this lower control arm to break loose. So, morning again. So last night I kind of gave up the fight, I'll be honest. Mosquitoes had apparently called in for reinforcements. It was a bad situation. Apparently even the citronella candle that I had brought out, one of those outdoor things, it was no match. So in either case, we're back again this morning. It's Mother's Day, so to all the mothers out there, we're not putting tools down until this thing fires up and moves out of its current parked position under its own power. Here we go. So remember how I said we were just gonna throw the old shocks out, throw the new ones in, and be pressing on, and then Murphy shows up? I had this thought in my mind, it would separate pretty easily, fall right apart, everything would be good. No. Ended up separating the upper one, swinging the control arm out of the way, and everything went pretty smoothly. So the good news is that's done, and now we're ready for rubber. I got a set of Cooper Cobras for this car, the original steel wheels, painted them white real quick. I just hit them with some engine high temperature paint. It's just, this stuff should stand at the summer heat here in Texas pretty well. 90% of it's gonna be covered by the original wheel covers anyway. So let's get these put on and we'll move to the other side and do the other shock, and hopefully it won't go nearly as complicated.
No, ladies and gentlemen, you're not going deaf. I'm not a ventriloquist, and this is not a knockoff Japanese karate movie. No, this is simply one of those times when some idiot who's going to remain nameless forgot to turn his microphone on to give you guys a little bit of a lowdown on the starter situation. But here's the highlight reel. Here's the cliff notes. The old stock starter was dying. You'd turn the key, it would spin the gear, but it wouldn't engage the flywheel. The starter had been on there forever, as far as I can recall. I think my brother replaced it sometime back in the mid-90s, so it was no surprise that it was on its way out the door. And I had already known that I wanted to swap it with a Magnum style mini starter, or what they call the Mopar High Performance High Torque Mini Starter. It's got a bunch of different names, but the short version is, you go to your local parts store, you ask for a starter for a 95 Dodge with a 5.2 or 5.9 Magnum. I think even the V6 motors are the same style. They use the same starter. And this is what you get. It's a much smaller, tighter package. It's not as susceptible to heat soak close to headers or exhaust manifolds like the old boat anchor starters. They're so much lighter. They're so much easier to work with. Their only Achilles heel are where the power attachments are made. The main stud and the exciter stud on these mini starters come dangerously close to the side windows of a big block on a Mopar. As you can see here, the old electrical connectors are on the side at about the 10 o'clock position. On the new one, they're straight up at 12. And that could present a problem, especially on the big blocks. What I've done in the past is cut the terminals down short, but your main cables still get really close. I found one of these 90-degree terminals that you bolt onto your power studs. Unbolt the original hardware that comes on the starter, bolt on the new terminals. You may have to shave a little bit of the studs down coming out of the top of the starter, but this re-angles and redirects the connections for your main wire and your exciter wire and gets it away from the engine block. That way, you don't turn the key and burn your Mopar to the ground. Instead, you get this high torque mini starter that spins the engine a lot faster and gets you on the road to enjoying your hot rod.
So I'm bolting the starter up. Starter's in the car, fit like a glove. The terminal relocators work like a champ. And I was just about to get ready to hook up the main cable, and I got to looking at them. This thing is factory original. I'm pretty sure it's never been off the car. And it's starting to get frayed and pull apart, and the cable inside is looking green and corroded. So we're going to do away with that. This thing comes way too close to the block to chance it. Instead, we're going to build a new set of main cables. What I like to do is I'll go on Amazon and I just order a 25-foot roll of jumper cables. They're 1500 amp, they're 0 gauge, and they're actually really easy to work with. Once you get them out of the back, just go ahead and take the cable clamps off the ends. In this case, there's a little nut here, so I just grabbed trusty old Harbor Freight Special Crescents, because they're not on very tight. They are in an awkward spot though. Apparently they're a Phillips head screw too. You can just spin it off from the other side. Oh yeah, way easier. Remember kids, do as I say, not as I do. You'll have to forgive me, there's mosquitoes all over the place. It's May in Texas, and for whatever reason the mosquitoes are hunting people down like vultures. They're immune to bug spray, they're immune to citronella candles. I'm pretty sure the only thing that kills them is either carburetor cleaner or bullets. I didn't realize that was so tasty. So once you get the terminal clamps off from the jumper cables, peel these clamped sections open. Old clamps, gone. And in their place, we're going to leave that just the way it is. We're going to twist these up, make them nice and tight, bunch them up together. Got our new 0 gauge wire terminal ends. We're just going to slide that in there. It butts up nice and square to the shoulder. Grab our crimping tool. And I like to crimp these in 2 directions. Make sure the wire is fully seated into the terminal, and then crunch her down. And then I like to rotate it 90 degrees and do it one more time. There we go. She's good and tight. Give her the tug test. She passes. Grab our super huge heat shrink tubing for our 0 gauge. And we're going to peel off about, I don't know, about a 2-inch section, I think. Slide it over our newly crimped terminal, and then alright. Now on this particular brand of heat shrink tubing, I don't know if you can see it or not, there's like a sealer on the inside of the tube. You can barely see it. I like to heat it until that starts to ooze out. That way I know for certain this thing is shrunk as far as it'll go, plus it's weatherproofed. So I'm going to measure the distance on this one. We're trying to compare it to the original starter wire, and I wanted to add about 5 or 6 inches. That way I know I had plenty of cable, kind of like that. So I'm going to make a new ground cable. We're going to go back out to the car here in just a minute, get these strapped on, finish the oil change, and then we got some more stuff coming up. Okay, so we got our new main cables made. I'm going to wrap these up, get those down underneath, get them rehooked to the starter. And then we'll finally come up here and start changing spark plugs and the fuel pump and that kind of stuff. If there's anything that's going to give you troubles when an old car, when you go to start it for the first time in a long time, it's bound to be the battery terminal clamps themselves. When I went the other day and got a new battery for this car, I went ahead and took the liberty, since they had them on the shelf, just get a new pair of clamps. They're good thick lead. I got them from an actual battery retailer, so you know they're going to get the good stuff. And I mean, it's kind of hard to go wrong with battery terminal clamps, so I picked these up. They should work fine. I just wanted to do some pre-measuring before I really got too carried away putting it all together. I think I got her. If you're not biting your tongue every once in a while, you're not doing it right. It's like an old Chinese proverb or something, I'm pretty sure. Spun the oil filter off. It's draining oil out of the oil pump. Well, that's still dripping because I want to make sure I get as much of the old oil out of this motor as possible. It's been sitting forever. I am going to move on to pulling these old spark plugs because God knows how long they've been in this motor. And God knows how many times we've flooded this poor thing trying to get it to start in the past. OPEC may come and shut us down before we even turn the key on this thing. It's like I'm close, but I'm so far away. With these big block Chryslers, you can't get too carried away with pre-filling your oil filters because they go on at basically a 90-degree angle. You know, it's not a small block Chevy or even a small block Mopar where they go in at like a 45 or something degree angle. So you can pre-fill them quite a bit, but it's not going to matter much. We're going to go ahead and we're going to pre-lube the motor with a priming tool after we pull the distributor, of course. So that won't be a big deal, but just out of habit, I like to at least get some oil in the filter before I ever put it on the motor, just to know that there is at least some in there. And I go ahead and I put just a little ring around that rubber gasket right there. Let's see if I remember how to install an oil filter. Alright, with any kind of luck, that should do it for the down and dirty, roll around in the dirt with the spiders and the other critters that want to eat you alive and give you all sorts of infectious diseases portion of the program. The rest of the fun and activities, for those of you playing at home, should all happen up here now. I ran into a few hurdles along the way. The brake drum on that side didn't want to come off. I was wanting to adjust the brakes and at least look at the hardware to see if there was something there that resembled a brake shoe, since this car does have drums on all four corners. We will be rebuilding the front suspension of this car. Granted, the thing's only got 28,000 miles on it, which is basically still new. Since the car has sat most of its life, all the rubber components underneath this car have just basically turned to dust. All the rubber boots are cracked and broken apart. It's not worth me trying to pump any grease into these joints. The car literally just needs to roll 50, 60 yards under its own power and then crawl back on a trailer. And then once we rebuild the front suspension, obviously we'll be putting a lot more road time on it at that point. Let's start filling this thing up with some fresh oil for the first time in probably 18 years. What do you say? Or pour it all over the exhaust manifold. That works too. Let's see if I can find a funnel. Ta-da! As if by magic. I like using old oil bottles because in a lot of cases they actually work better than the funnels you can buy in an AutoZone or O'Reilly's or something. But plus, these will hold more than your standard funnels will. So if you're trying to pour in a hurry, you won't make an enormous mess. We're going to fix all the things that we find wrong with this car as time goes on. Replace a bunch of the old worn parts that have served their duty life. Ultimately get this car back to a daily driver status, including making the air conditioner work again. I do need to replace the heater core in this car. I guess it leaked for a while, hence why you'll see over there the heater bypass hose has basically been looped on the water pump, runs back to itself. So to keep the floorboard from becoming a swimming pool. Like I said, I would like to see this car return to full daily duty, or at least, 2 or 3 days out of the week, drivable kind of situation. That would make me happy. I should drive it to work. We've been working on this thing all day long. Finally got motor out here. We're going to try to fire this thing up, see if it runs. It's on you.
Yay! It started. It sure bounces.
Shakes a little bit.
You're in charge of rolling the windows up.
I got it.
Okay.
This thing, oh man, it's been so long. Suspension's still a little weird, a little play the steering, but otherwise not bad. I mean, got 140 degrees water temperature, we got 50 pounds of oil pressure. It's not awful. This is actually pretty decent. Man, this is great. I really expected it to, rattle and clatter and be noisier than it is, but we're cruising along at a steady 26 miles an hour. It's a little road weary, but it's okay. My God, this is great. This was worth it. This is a great Mother's Day gift, I'll tell you that. drives way better than you'd think for sitting for so long. Oh, I gotta adjust my mirror. What am I thinking? Safety first, people. There we go. This feels good. This definitely needed to happen. This car has been sitting for way too long. This thing just cruises. This is one of those cars where you don't ever want to be in a hurry to get there. You know? You just want to take your time and enjoy the ride. That's what this car was made for. I gotta admit, it's a pretty good feeling. You know, this car has been basically ignored for over 35 years. You know, the occasional go out, charge the battery, start it up, let it run kind of deal, but it never really got any road time. There's nothing wrong with this motor. There's nothing wrong with this car. It just, you know, it'll need some suspension work soon, but we got something for that.
I am just so proud that the next generation of my family can enjoy this piece of history.